Welcome back to Revenge by Karma, I'm Etta. Today's story proves that the higher you sit, the harder you fall when karma finally comes to collect. Rosa was just a nameless maid to the billionaire Whitmore family, someone to scrub their floors and stay out of sight. But when she revealed she was carrying the heir to their fortune, they didn't just turn their backs. They threw a 7-month pregnant woman out into a life-threatening storm like she was yesterday's trash. They thought they had won. They thought Rosa had nobody. But they forgot one thing. Secrets never stay buried. When a mysterious gold locket was found in the ER, it summoned a man the entire world fears, a man who had been searching for his lost daughter for 24 years. The Whitmores didn't just kick out a maid that night. They declared war on a Mafia Don. And as you're about to see, Don Carbone doesn't just get angry. He gets even. Stick around, because the look on Eleanor Whitmore's face when she realizes who she messed with is something you cannot miss.
The rain didn't just fall that night. It screamed. It hammered against the arched windows of the Whitmore mansion like it was trying to wash away the sins hidden inside. I stood in the grand foyer, my hands trembling as I pressed them against my 7-month pregnant belly. For 2 years, I had been Rosa, the nameless maid from the Catholic orphanage who polished their silver until her fingers bled. I was furniture. Until Marcus Whitmore decided I was a secret. Marcus stood by the fireplace, his face pale. He wouldn't look at me. Months ago, he whispered promises of marriage in the garden. Now, he looked like a man watching a car crash. His mother, Eleanor, stood between us like a frozen statue of spite. She had just found out about the baby, and the air in the room felt like a vacuum. "Say it, Marcus," Eleanor hissed. "Tell this girl exactly what she is." I looked at him, my heart hammering. "Marcus, please. Tell her about the nights in the library. Tell her we were going to name him Luca." Marcus finally looked at me, but his eyes were cold. "I don't know what you're talking about, Rosa," he said, his voice hollow. "You've always been unstable. I was nice to you because I felt sorry for you. This is a sick fantasy to trap me before my engagement." The words hit harder than a physical blow. "You're lying," I cried. I turned to Gerald, the patriarch. He knew. He had seen us. But he looked away, choosing his reputation over the truth. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing a job, I was losing my humanity. The front door swung open with a heavy thud, letting in a gust of freezing wind. Eleanor didn't wait for me to pack. She grabbed my arm with a grip like iron and hauled me toward the darkness. My single bag, containing my few clothes and the gold locket I'd had since infancy, was thrown onto the porch. It landed in a muddy puddle with a wet splash. "Get out," Eleanor commanded. "If I see you near this property again, I'll have you arrested for harassment. You are a mistake that is being erased tonight." "It's storming," I sobbed, looking at the flooded driveway. "I have no money, Eleanor. Please, let me stay until morning. Think of the baby." She didn't flinch. "That baby is your problem. Perhaps you can find another family to scam." She shoved me, and the door slammed. The click of the deadbolt sounded like a guillotine. I walked 3 blocks, soaking wet within seconds. The wind was so strong it felt like it was trying to push me into the ground. My stomach tightened with a sharp, terrifying pain. The stress was forcing the baby to kick violently. I reached a convenience store, but the world started to spin. The neon lights blurred into long, yellow streaks. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the wet concrete. "Help," I whispered. A man dropped his groceries and ran toward me. "Someone call an ambulance. She's pregnant." The last thing I felt was the icy water rushing over my skin before the darkness took me. I woke up to the smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beep 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 of an ER monitor. My body felt like it had been run over. A nurse in blue scrubs appeared, her face tight with worry. Stay down, Rosa. You're at St. Catherine's. You went into early labor from the shock. My baby. I whispered. We've slowed it down for now, she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Is there any family we can call? No, I choked out. I'm alone. I've always been alone. The nurse noticed something clutched in my hand. It was my gold locket. She took it gently to put it in a safe bag. As she turned it over, she froze. Her skin went pale. She looked at the locket, then at my face, then back at the locket. Her hands began to shake. Rosa, she whispered. I worked at the orphanage 24 years ago. I remember the night a terrified woman brought you in. She told us to change your name because your real name, Rosa Carbone, would get you killed. I stared at her, confused. Carbone? What does that mean? Wait here, she said, her voice frantic. There is a man who has offered $1 million for information about a girl with this locket. He has never stopped looking. She ran out of the room, leaving me alone with the sound of my own racing heart. 40 minutes later, a strange silence rippled through the ER. The shouting stopped. The nurses froze. Even the security guards stood a little straighter. I heard heavy, deliberate footsteps, the sound of someone who owned the ground they walked on. The curtain of my bay was pulled back. A tall man in a charcoal gray suit stepped inside. His hair was silver at the temples, and his face was a map of power and gravity. Behind him stood 3 men in black suits, their eyes scanning the room like hawks. This was Don Vicente Carbone. He walked to my bedside and stopped. He looked at the locket, then at me. His shoulders suddenly slumped. His face crumbled. He reached out a trembling hand and touched my cheek. Then, the most feared man in the city began to cry. Deep, ragged sobs that seemed to come from his soul. Rosa, he whispered. My little Rosa. Who are you? I asked, trembling. I am your father, he said, taking my hand. 24 years ago, your mother fled to keep you safe during a war. I thought I had lost you forever. I have searched every corner of this earth for you. He looked at my hospital gown and the 4 in my arm. His eyes turned from grief to a cold, terrifying fire. The nurse told me what they did to you, he said, his voice a low growl. They didn't know they were throwing out a queen, Rosa. They didn't know they were declaring war on the Carbones. He turned to his men. Get the best doctors. Now. I was moved to a luxury suite within the hour. Fresh flowers and silk linens replaced the sterile ER sheets. Don Vicente never left my side. A DNA test confirmed what he already knew. He looked at me, his eyes softening. Tell me about the father of this child, Rosa. Tell me everything. I told him about Marcus, the promises, the library, the engagement to Priya, and the slap from Eleanor. As I spoke, the air in the room grew cold. My father didn't shout. He just listened, his grip tightening on the arm of his chair until the wood creaked. The Whitmores, he said softly. They think they are elite. They think they can discard people like trash. He looked at me. By tomorrow, they will realize their mistake. I won't lift a finger to hurt them. The fear of what I might do will be enough to dismantle their lives. He handed a small, gold-embossed card with the Carbone crest to one of his men. Deliver this to Gerald Whitmore. Personally. Do not say a word. Just give him the card and leave. What will happen? I asked. In this city, the Whitmores exist because I allow it, he replied. Their contracts, their investors, their pride, it's all about to evaporate. Rest now, my daughter. Your son will never know what it feels like to be small. Friday morning at the Whitmore mansion began with a terrifying silence. Gerald Whitmore was in his study when his butler entered, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Sir, A man left this for you. Gerald took the cream-colored card. When he saw the Carbone crest, the sword wrapped in vines, he dropped his coffee. The cup shattered on the rug. He knew that symbol. It was the mark of the man who controlled the docks, the banks, and the shadows of the city. "We're dead," Gerald whispered. Eleanor walked in, dressed for a lunch meeting. "Gerald? What is it?" "The maid, Eleanor." "Rosa," Gerald hissed. "She looks exactly like Sofia Carbone. We threw the daughter of Vicente Carbone out into a storm. We threw his grandchild into the mud." Eleanor's face turned a sickly green. "No, she was a nobody." The phone began to ring. It didn't stop. Gerald's lead investor pulled out of a $50 million deal. The bank called to freeze his line of credit. Then, Priya Donovan's father called. "Gerald, the engagement is off. My family cannot be associated with people who cross the Carbones. Don't call us again." The Whitmore empire, built over 40 years, was collapsing in 40 minutes. At the hospital, the doctors decided a C-section was necessary. My father stayed in the waiting room, his security detail guarding the floor. When I heard that first loud cry in the operating room, I felt a peace I'd never known. "It's a boy," the doctor said. "They brought him to me. He was perfect." "Luca," I whispered. "Your name is Luca Carbone." When I returned to my suite, my father was waiting. I watched the most powerful man in the city reach out and hold my son. He looked at the baby with pure awe. "He has your mother's nose," he whispered. While we shared that moment, the Whitmores were drowning. Eleanor had tried to buy her way into the hospital, but she was turned away at the gate. Marcus was hiding in his apartment as his social life went up in flames. They were finally learning what it felt like to have nowhere to go. But inside our room, it was quiet. I looked at my father and realized that the best revenge wasn't a lawsuit. It was the fact that we were here, together, and the Whitmores were already becoming a footnote in our history. They had tried to erase me, but they had only led me back to my throne. On the third day, Eleanor Whitmore made a final, desperate move. She thought she could fix things with an apology. I watched the security feed from the lobby. Eleanor was there, wearing her pearls and holding a massive bouquet of lilies. The nurse at the desk looked at her with pure disgust. "Miss Carbone is not accepting visitors, Mrs. Whitmore." "Don't be ridiculous," Eleanor snapped. "We are practically family. I'm here to bring her home." The nurse leaned forward. "Home? You mean the porch you threw her onto in the rain? Mrs. Whitmore, everyone knows who you are now. More importantly, we know who she is. Leave before I have security escort you out like you did to her." Eleanor froze. She looked around the lobby and saw the staff and patients staring at her, not with respect, but with loathing. She was no longer a queen. She was a pariah. She turned on her heel and dumped the expensive flowers in a trash can by the door. I turned off the monitor and looked at my father. "She wanted to bring us home." "You are home," he replied. "And that woman will never be allowed to breathe the same air as you again." The final blow came on the fourth day. Marcus managed to sneak into the hallway, following a delivery person. He stood outside the glass window of my room. He looked disheveled, his eyes red from lack of sleep. He saw me sitting up in a silk robe, holding Luca. He saw Don Vicente sitting beside me, smiling. The realization hit Marcus like a physical weight. He saw the security, the luxury, and the man who could end him with a whisper. He saw the child he had called a fantasy, the heir to a fortune that dwarfed the Whitmores. I looked Marcus right in the eye. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the need to scream. I felt nothing. He was a small, unimportant coward. I looked away from him and back at my son. My father's hand moved toward his jacket, but I shook my head. "Let him watch," I whispered. Let him see what he threw away. Marcus stood there for a long time, looking like he wanted to beg for mercy. But he knew there was no bridge back. He eventually turned and walked down the long, quiet hallway, his shoulders hunched. He was walking back to a foreclosed house and an empty future. He was gone, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely light. The day I was discharged, the sun was blinding. A fleet of black cars waited at the hospital entrance. My father walked beside me, carrying Luca's car seat like a holy relic. The hospital staff lined the halls, not because they were told to, but because they had watched a girl become a princess. As we drove through the city, we passed the Whitmore neighborhood. I saw the for sale signs. My father told me they were moving into a tiny apartment across the state. Their shame was too loud for them to stay. I thought about the orphanage and the years of scrubbing floors. I had spent my life believing I belonged to nobody. I looked at my father, who was showing Luca his gold watch. I realized my mother hadn't left me. She had saved me. What are you thinking? My father asked. I'm thinking about the rain, I said, and how it washed the filth away so I could see clearly. He took my hand. Being generous to toxic people isn't kindness, Rosa. It's funding their delusion. You're a Carbone now. You only look forward. As the gates of our estate opened, I didn't feel like a servant. I felt like the mistress of the house. I walked up the steps with my head high. The past was a closed book. I was a mother, a daughter, and a Carbone. And we were finally home.
And that, my friends, is what we call grade A karma. The Whitmores spent their lives looking down on everyone, only to end up with nothing but the shame they earned. Rosa didn't have to lift a finger for revenge. Her father's shadow was enough to turn their empire into dust. But I want to hear from you. If you were in Rosa's shoes, could you have stayed as quiet and graceful as she did? Or would you have wanted to see the Whitmores face a much more personal punishment from the Don? Drop a C in the comments if you think the Carbones handled it perfectly. Or if you wanted even more revenge. If you loved seeing the underdog finally take her throne, smash that like button and subscribe to Revenge by Karma with Etta. We post stories like this every week that prove one thing. Karma has everyone's address, and she never misses a delivery. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that how you treat people matters. Thanks for watching. I'm Etta, and I'll see you in the next one where the bullies finally get what's coming to them.